Education has been a staple of the American dream for over a century. It has been held that educating our children will lead to a more educated society, which will improve the quality of life within that society and improve the global economic standing of the nation. As parents, we want our children to live happy and successful lives, and that being educated will not only improve our society, but the quality of life for each child. The challenge to attaining this lies in what and how to teach. This goal has been executed differently in each era of our educational history as a nation. Around the turn of the century, most children only needed basic trade arithmetic to be successful. They got this instruction in elementary school, so secondary education focused on the few that would attend college to become professional scientists or mathematicians. Then around the beginning of the Great Depression, more students were going into secondary education to keep them out of the workforce. To prepare them for the technological advances of the time, the non-college bound student received more practical mathematics instruction. Going into the modern era with the launch of Sputnik, there was a large national push to prepare the next generation for the more complex mathematics being required. Colleges were stressing calculus and modern algebra, which raised the standards of secondary education to prepare all students for this higher mathematics. When this push did not significantly decrease the number of failing students, the next era of math education called for teachers to return back to basics. New research was enlightening how children learn, and new technologies like the calculator became available, which required educators to consider how best to proceed. This brings us to the standards era that we find ourselves in today. With the interconnected global economy, technology advancing exponentially, and an information-driven society, standards were put in place for all students to meet to prepare them for the demands they will face. In collaboration with educators, mathematicians, and business leaders, standards have been created and adjusted over the past 30 years to bring us the Common Core State Standards that have been adopted in 45 states and 3 territories. The goal of these standards is not to fill our children's heads with lots of information, but to teach them how to understand the information they need to be successful. As we look to how best to prepare our children to succeed in society, we are hopeful for the CCSS being set in place. We urge teachers and administrators to consider using the textbooks, technology, and assessments that will foster in our children a deeper understanding of our world. With national standards now upon us, adopting a new textbook will guide instruction in the classroom for years to come. As parents, this is a very important topic not to leave out. National standards will give textbook publishers one set of standards to develop from instead of 50. This will allow publishers to focus their time and money into creating quality content. With 2 high-stakes assessments representing large consortiums of states, publishers are available to develop their materials to align to 2 assessments rather than many. Again, this allows for more time and money being focused on less materials, which should produce a better product. Each state is given the ability to add an additional 15% to CCSS that is seen as important to the state or is required by state law. This will allow publishers to include a little bit more customization in the textbook, which would appeal to each state. Lastly, with new textbooks being a must across the country, there are many parties that are interested in taking advantage of this opportunity. The CCSS promote many non-traditional learning environments to occur to reach each objective in the standards. This leads many developers to evaluate their curriculum material with a new perspective. All of these factors need to be considered when selecting a new textbook. These materials need to not just meet the standards, but exceed them. With many developers, traditional and non-traditional, in the competition for school districts to buy their product, we feel it is our responsibility to make sure certain aspects are thought of when adopting a new textbook. The first being that the new textbook will actually prepare my child and future children for college or the workforce as the CCSS boasts they will. Most importantly, I think this needs to be done by building students' critical thinking skills through more challenging problems that require problem solving. We also believe textbook adopters will need to evaluate textbooks for how the content is displayed. The standards leave a lot of room for variation in teaching strategies, so the textbook should have the content structured to facilitate any strategy. The standards for mathematical practice describe varieties of expertise that mathematics educators at all levels should seek to develop in their students. These practices rest on important processes and proficiencies with long-standing importance in mathematics education. No matter the type of instruction, the examples and problems presented should help foster the development of these skills. If these skills can be taught, then we think teachers would be able to say that they prepared their students for whatever life gives them after high school. As parents, we want to see an increased use of technology in the classroom. It is no longer an option to operate in society without interacting with technology on a daily basis. Historically, schools prepared students for the transactions they would need to conduct operating family businesses and small shops. As colleges increased the level of their prerequisite courses and curriculum became standardized across the country, the amount of mathematics taught in schools increased. Though there has been debate over the purpose of mathematics education, we feel that there should still be a strong emphasis on preparing students for participation in society after high school, and the curriculum needs to reflect this goal. As successful members of society, our students need to learn 21st century skills. These skills apply to the job market as well as the college community. Nearly all information is now communicated digitally, and then needs to be intelligently organized and presented. Social media sites are no longer just for Sally to say what she wore to school today or tell us that she is dating Bobby. Companies market themselves on Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest, and colleges expect students to check their email and the school's online learning management system daily. We now share data on clouds, shared drives, and in Google Documents. Professors create wikis and blogs. In the traditional classroom, there is no preparation for this type of technology use. Not only does the traditional classroom ignore what society expects of our students once they graduate, but it disregards their background, interests, and preferences. Our students have naturally grown up interacting with television, computers, cell phones, and constant access to the internet, earning them the title of digital natives. The way that they communicate and entertain themselves centers around technology. Yet the second they enter the classroom, they are asked to get out a pencil, paper, large printed textbook, and watch the teacher write on the board. Students are expected to digest information in a way that is completely foreign to them, and not surprisingly, they struggle. The above cartoon makes fun of the fact that students expect all surfaces to be interactive touchscreens, yet with smartboards, the technology exists to prove the joke wrong. As parents, we would like to see the school curriculum take into greater account our children's proficiency in using technology to interact with information. In addition to our children's experience with using technology to process information, they have needs as visual, auditory, and kinesthetic learners. Technology has the benefit of appealing to all three of these types of students in communicating mathematics. Though some students do well in the traditional classroom setting, we want a curriculum that will apply to all of our children rather than a select few. By integrating technology on a regular basis, you would be engaging all types of learners, perhaps including those who never seem to care. As parents, we know what grabs our children's attention, and it is video games more often than our own voice. We want our children to have interest in what they are learning, and technology can help increase that interest. A key way in which this happens is through personal interaction with the technology. Because each student is able to operate their own computer or calculator, they are able to have their own experience with the information to build on in later classes. We know the technology is available, and a number of us parents use advanced technology on a regular basis in our jobs. We know that our children will be entering jobs similar to our own when they graduate, and we want them to be prepared to succeed in those jobs. A number of different technological resources are available, and it is disappointing how little they are used in classrooms. We know that funding is always a concern, but there are a number of free resources available. Most schools already have a computer lab and a set of graphing calculators, and there are plenty of things that can be done just with these two resources. We found simulators and free downloadable software available with some research on the internet. We do in fact want our children to be able to use graphing calculators. Algebra skills should be learned by hand first, but we recognize that the technology is nearly always available for the students to use, and there are more in-depth activities that can be done when a calculator speeds up the time needed in class. Additionally, many of our children will need to know how to use calculators in college, and we want them to be prepared. We want our students to see teaching strategies other than a traditional method, such as a flipped classroom. Studies on the flipped classroom have been successful, and we would like to see the teachers use more teaching methods such as this one. Our children would benefit from these types of strategies with more activities during class time. The flipped classroom uses the expertise of our teachers as a guide on the side rather than a sage on the stage, by opening class time for collaborative work. Our students are less frustrated, and they take advantage of the technology available to learn concepts and review them on their own time. Even by simply providing varied teaching methods, those students that don't succeed under the traditional methods would have a chance for success. This can be done through an increased use of technology in the classroom, which continues to be the future of our society. As parents, we want our children to be assessed so we can be confident that they are being taught as well as learning the state standards. However, we do not want an assessment that simply measures a student's procedural fluency. We are also concerned about problem solving and reasoning. A high-stakes assessment for this particular instance we are defining as a test that determines graduation. High-stakes testing became very prevalent in high school classrooms after President Bush signed No Child Left Behind into law in 2001. NCLB requires states to assess students on state-created standards. In 2009, with President Obama in office, a new education initiative was created, Race to the Top. Race to the Top gave states incentives to adopt a set of national standards known as the Common Core Standards. With a new set of standards comes a new set of high-stakes tests. A lot is still unknown about what will become of the new high-stakes tests, but regardless, as parents, we believe that high-stakes tests are an important part of education. It is important for schools to have high-stakes assessment for many reasons. First of all, it gives parents the confidence that the teachers of their child are teaching the correct material. We no longer have to worry that one teacher is teaching one set of curriculum and another teacher elsewhere is teaching another set of curriculum. All students should be learning the same material. High-stakes assessment also allows us to gauge how well a school is doing because all schools are giving the exact same assessment. High-stakes assessments also put more meaning into a high school diploma because the student has shown proficiency on the designated standards by passing a high-stakes test. These are all reasons of why high-stakes tests are a valuable part of high school education. We've just given some reasons why high-stakes tests are valuable. However, if the high-stakes tests are not an accurate measure of student learning, or the standards are being assessed are not good standards, then none of these reasons are true. Currently, AIMS is given to students during their sophomore year. This test is intended to measure students' proficiency level on Algebra 1 and geometry standards. As parents, we don't believe that one test can accurately measure a student's 2-year knowledge of mathematics. We believe that more tests, more frequently, would give a more accurate assessment of student learning. As Common Core begins to phase in the next couple of years, and students start to take the PARCC assessment, they will begin to be assessed multiple times their freshman, sophomore, and junior year. This should increase the accuracy of the assessment. However, just having more assessments will not fix the problem. We also need better assessments. We don't just want our child to memorize a bunch of different procedures. We want our child to be able to apply those procedures to solve problems that require critical thinking and reasoning. In order for our children to learn these skills, they need to be taught them. In order for them to be taught, they need to be incorporated into the curriculum, and that means they need to be assessed on high-stake exams. Now, We can't just add more problem solving and reasoning tasks to the already large curriculum. We need to have fewer standards so teachers are allowed to focus in on the most important topics in mathematics and go deep into those topics. There are currently too many Arizona State mathematics standards that are being assessed on the AIMS. This seems to be improved with creation of the Common Core. The Common Core mathematics standards are fewer and more vague than the current standards. Just having more assessments and better standards is not good enough. Even if the new Common Core standards are a big improvement, it won't matter unless the high-stakes tests accurately assess students on these standards. As parents, we believe that high-stakes tests play an important role in our children's education, but if they are not valid and reliable assessments of rigorous mathematical standards, we don't want them. These three issues speak to the heart of parents. It is not that we care deeply about the proper construction of curriculum, but we do care deeply for our children. As we mentioned in the beginning, we want our children to lead happy and successful lives. We feel that providing our children with the most innovative textbooks and advanced technology will prepare them for their future. Also, to ensure that our children are not being left behind, we desire informative assessments that describe what adjustments they need to graduate and ultimately carve their niche in society. After all, we are not proud of our graduates for passing a test. We are proud of them for rising to the challenge and proving they are ready for what lies ahead. Therefore, we urge you to take these issues into consideration while you are developing curriculum. Thank you.